So I'm Mark Watts, and we're here today to talk about my father, the late Allan Watts. He's become very, very popular on the internet. We just counted, and he has 500 million views on YouTube and headed for more. His words have become a real form of comfort for a lot of people.
When you can really allow yourself to be afraid, and you don't resist the experience of fear, you are truly beginning to master fear.
We find Allan's words extremely relevant to the very stimulated and divided society that we live in today. So we wanted to introduce his work to a new audience. And for the people who are familiar with his work, we wanted to introduce a new way of experiencing his talks.
Energy cannot be manifested without inertia. There must be something to push against for there to be any manifestation of energy. You cannot dance without a floor to use your energy against.
When I first heard Allan speak, a few things struck me. First of all, of course, how fun and light his delivery is, his trademark laughter, but also the lightness with which he tackles such complex subjects as society, consciousness, the universe.
He built upon that idea of the divine self as he went into looking at Buddhism and Taoism. And it was his ability to understand these philosophies in a very human way, and even as children, be able to communicate to us these essential core ideas. So one of the reasons that I think my father's work has remained so relevant today is he always avoided what he called intellectual spookery, which is using words and terms that people didn't understand to, in essence, browbeat them into accepting him as an authority. He never did that, and he did the opposite. He always endeavored to make things simpler and clearer and to use language that would make it available to everybody. And I think that this accessibility and also this desire on his part to really let people know that they had this knowledge within themselves and that it was really just a matter of pushing these buttons and opening these key ideas for them to be able to access it.
So basically, Allan is known for popularizing Eastern philosophy for the West, and his work spans music, movies, and video games. And for me personally, it all started with a video game that is called Everything. That is an open world sandbox experience where you can literally be everything, from a particle to a piece of a rubber band to a universe or a continent. And the whole experience is soundtracked by the words of Allan Watts, so it's essentially an interactive version of his work. So what's interesting is this game is actually created by a very talented animation artist called David O'Reilly. And he also created a video game sequence for this movie, Her. This movie actually features AI version of Allan Watts. At some point, all AIs, they come together and they create AI version of his talks. And basically with this project, we're fulfilling the prophecy of this movie.
Paradise is a garden. And all the trouble began when people substituted the heavenly city for the paradise garden.
In 1953, the year I was born, he began giving talks on KPFA. And by 1956, this was it was a show, they called it The Hangover Cure, because it aired on Sunday mornings. But it was a great series of talks on the great books of Asia and all of these Far Eastern themes. And that began a period in which he regularly made recordings. And soon, though, a friend of his introduced him to a portable tape recorder. And it was very interesting because when he made recordings at the station and he was alone in the booth, his talks were more formal, and it was almost as if he was still speaking to the intellectual community. But as soon as he got in front of a live audience with a less obvious portable tape recorder, then his real entertaining and engaging personality came out. And this is the Allan that we know today through all of his talk. I would show up at, whether it was Chicago, Philadelphia, New York City, meet him at the airport, take the Niagara off his shoulder, follow him to wherever he was speaking, and we began to collect these recordings. When I returned to California and was living aboard his ferry boat. Big, beautiful ferry boat, and he used it for seminars. And I lived in a little pilot house on the top, on the deck, and we would spend time there listening to the recordings and also hosting seminars and making more recordings. And at one point my father said, looking at a large wall of tapes by this time, of 8-foot tall shelf of tapes, he said, why don't you go through the top shelves and pick out the best lectures, the essential lectures. So the first project was to create the essential lectures, which was done in 1971.
The content of conscious perception is a tiny fragment of what's going on around you.
Today, the Electronic University has become the Allan Watts organization, and our main goal is outreach. We've seen, all kinds of videos made from the work, everything from, rappers to surfers to hang gliders to mountain climbers. We just got one from Kashmir, and we are actively pursuing the building of a creative community around these works. In these filmmaking collaborations, early on, we were approached by a company called Mind Fitness, and they wanted to make meditation modules with biofeedback. And this was in the 80s. And we created with them a series of little videos with clouds floating by and streams and all of that. And my father was speaking, and there was a little music in the background, and they had you listen to this in a little booth hooked up to biofeedback. So in essence, they were presaging both the phenomena that we see on YouTube of these nature footage, music videos with my father's work, but also this idea that Endel is now bringing to fruition with connecting this type of a meditation soundscape with your own rhythms.
Wiggly Wisdom is the latest in the ongoing collaboration series between Endel and our favorite artists. It's a spoken word soundscape that features brand new sounds by Endel infused with the words of Allan Watts. So with this project, we wanted to create a new way of experiencing spoken word content. Rather than listening to the same talk over and over again, we suggest you play our soundscape in the background, and after about 10 minutes, a phrase floats by, and you listen to it, and then you go about your day. But then another one floats in, and so little by little, in this bite-sized, laid-back manner, you consume philosophy almost as a subliminal message. So what usually happens with our soundscapes is that sound intensity is mapped to your current circadian rhythm. So for example, if you're experiencing this natural midday energy drop, the sound intensity will match that. So here, we tried something different. We actually mapped cadence, length, and complexity of the quotes to your natural energy circadian rhythm. I don't think this mapping of philosophy to your natural energy cycles was ever attempted before. So we will, of course, take in feedback and improve the soundscape as we go.
It's fun. It's beautiful. Let's do some. And that's the attitude which I take to any practice which may be designated religious.
But what we've heard from some of our testers is they use it for work. Because the quotes are so sparse, they would focus on their work for about 10 minutes, then they would take in the message from Allan, and then they would get back to whatever they were doing. One of our board members, Kevin Rose, actually calls this dripping wisdom.
And so what's really interesting about Endel's approach is that they're timing it to your body cycles, to your circadian rhythms. Because every day we have a clock that runs inside of us. And so each of the applications within their soundscape, it knows what time you're in. So it's following you, and it can suggest things that will enhance. So for instance, in the morning, I love their focus ones. And I was sort of a music listener in the morning. My wife's out on the beach and doing yoga and suggesting different soundtracks. But the problem is you listen to the first soundtrack and it's fine, but then they go off to something else, and pretty soon it's out of sync with what you're doing, and it's a bit of a distraction. And then the beauty of these soundscapes, though, is because they're tuned to what you're doing, and you can change tasks, from focus to relaxation. The soundscape is less obtrusive, present but less obtrusive, and just goes well with everything. So whatever you're trying to accomplish, it runs in the background. Occasionally my father will pop in with a few words of wisdom, but it's primarily creating a space in which you can be and think in a calm, collected way. One of the really interesting things about this form of communication and working together is that it allows you to stay on center and stay in a place where you can actually tap your own resources and your own well-being and share that more efficiently.
I think this soundscape can be used for inspiration, motivation, but also relaxing with a purpose. Personally, I like to take Allan for a walk with me. Whenever you're commuting, running, walking, hiking, having Allan Watts in my head actually adds meaning to everything around me.